I really hope that's muted for everybody not in Powell, Butte. I'm so sorry. Shame on all of you. Mary said all the words of wisdom, and I'm like, I'm going to get halfway there because I haven't preached live in a while. You're going to get all the words. You're going to get every word in my head this morning. Wisdom, I don't know about that part. Here, you know what I love? I love that we're to a place where this feels like the experiment. We're like, I mean, what if you just like stood in front of people and preached directly to them? I don't know. I guess we could try it and see if it works. It is so cool to see faces. I'm kind of having an overload this morning because I want to like run around. They're so, I don't know how to say this in a way that's going to translate other than I'm just going to have to ask that you believe me. But there's so many faces represented in this room that mean so much to me that to just casually run by and give a high five, I'm like, it's more than that. And so to see your faces, like I said, I feel like we've been on this concept of homes and hometowns. And 1 week ago, I sat in the living room. And like I said, it was just my family. I got to sit there and I got to listen to what was going on here live that we had recorded with Steve. How cool has that been with Steve and Jody? Yeah, there, you can clap for that. I heard a podcast this week. Actually, Steve, if he's listening, Steve's the one that sent it to me. But Craig Groeschel said this. He said, the goal is to be what you are without being against what you're not. And I think that's what I'm saying is if church was strictly restricted to 2 and 3 people, you would be very intimate, very well known, you would be known, you'd be loved, but the amount of impact is going to be very limited in that. You know, when you look at the firewood, when you look at the 1017 project, 150,000 pounds of hamburger, those types of things, the thing that I'm so excited about is that it has traveled beyond any form of me, also from the podcast, but stick with me. The church has finally traveled outside of any form of we. I don't think there is one person that attends Shiloh, whether it's online or in person, that goes, I love every single thing they do and every single way that they do it. Not one person. Everybody who's a part or affiliated with Shiloh goes, you know, I like it except for that's good. That's what you want because it means the church has gone beyond someone's me into a group of we, and it is far more reaching. It's way more broad, and we all get to grow up a little bit. And so I won't say if this works anymore. If you're part of Shiloh, I'm declaring it today. As Brandon said, National Single Person Awareness Day. I'm declaring it today that it worked. It worked. I don't know what we're hoping for, but this is better. It's great to see people in person. It's great to see people gather together in large groups. It's cool to see small groups. And it feels like just kind of a Jesus culture that's developing around that. Okay, we're in a season. And church people, we say series. We're in a series because that's if you're a good pastor, you're supposed to be able to preach concepts in series because it means you know more than 1 week's worth of material about any given subject. But really, if you're not from a church background, if this isn't kind of where you're from, let me just say this. It's a season. It's like you get into a season and it's all you can see in the Word. You go to the Bible and you open it up, and whatever this season is that God's got you in as a leader, it's like that you see it everywhere. And the season that we're in right now is fertile soil, and I'm going to tell you what, that is something you could just skip right over and miss. And I'm so glad that we've taken 5 weeks. The podcast series has all been about fertility. This week is all about fertility. And what I'm finding is the deeper that I dig down into the concept, the more there is there. And so my job as a leader is not to manufacture your social lives. I think we've said that before. I'm not a very good mom. I'm a pretty good dad. This church isn't a very good mom. You kind of got to pedal your own bike, you know. And so when you look at fertility, there's so much of this contributor versus consumer, and that's one of the core values from the very beginning is that we want to create a culture of people who are contributors, not consumers. But if you don't explain why, if you don't understand biblically why it says that, then it sounds like we are a church of selfish people because we expect that you're going to contribute, and it's not about consumption. So as a result, like I said, series, it's a season. I'm going to read it to you. This will be the 5th week in a row you've heard this. Matthew chapter 13, verse 8 talks about fertile soil. It says, still other seed fell on good soil where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. And then it says, whoever has ears to hear, let him hear. And the disciples said, we don't understand it. We don't understand what was just said. Now, we do because we have the joy of reading it and then going back and examining it again. But the disciples, they ask him about it later in verse 23, and Jesus says, but the seed falling on the good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. So again, fair question. If church is not your background, or even if it is, I love asking why about everything. And I think it's maybe a deep down little rebellion against not how I was raised, because I wouldn't say that my mom and dad specifically, but the culture that I was raised in, because the question why was like, oh, someone's going to hear you say that. And I'm like, if my faith won't withstand the question why, I'm not sure what that says about what I say that I believe. Why? Well, it's only why because you never question it. Do you realize how much catastrophe has happened in the world when people go, why? Well, we don't know why. Well, why don't you question it? Because we're afraid it'll fall apart. Why is the life of fertility so important? Is it one or the other? Is it a church rule that you come in and you go, if you're going to be here, this is what we expect of you. You're going to, God love them. I saw you. It's so cold outside, you guys, and it's snowing, and you know how But listen. Speaking of church rule, and I'm not even being critical. I'm just telling you what I saw. You guys do what you want. We passed a group of teenage guys, like boys, maybe like early 20s, late teens, early 20s, and they're walking down the road, and they've all got their suit and tie on. Occasionally, you will run across a church rule because you're like, look at these guys. They're out there in the middle of what I would consider hell. Church rules. There's times where you see something, you're like, oh, that's that church. Stand up, sit down. Instantly, we know what I'm talking about. There are church rules. Sometimes you walk into church, like this is how the church does it. Is fertile soil, is it one of those church rules, or is it a design law? Because when I say speed limit, you instantly know there's a set speed limit. I'm in a book right now. It's A God-Shaped Heart by Timothy Jennings. I've talked about a God-shaped brain. This is a God-shaped heart. And he says this. He says, when you say speed limit, you realize that's a rule that's been put into place. Hopefully it produces some good. You know, and is it breakable? Well, sure, it's breakable. Is it bad? Well, only if you get caught, right? Hypothetically. But that exact same law, when the ice is on the road, I don't know, not funny at all, but did you guys see any of the footage of what happens when you're going the speed limit in unsafe conditions in Fort Worth this week? So the law is not fully complete. It's a recommendation, but a design law, then we say, well, it's like the law of gravity. Well, you can say that you don't believe it or agree with it or comply with it, but the law wasn't put there as a rule to change your behavior. It was put there as a suggestion of best practices. So when you look at fertile soil, when I stand up in front of a group of people, some that I know, some that I don't, and I say that the Bible teaches fertile soil, it is important to know which is this. Is this a church rule or a design law? I think I could preach 1,000 sermons on 1,000 Sundays about what it means to live life as a contributor versus a consumer. We'll start here. Church rule, just for a second. If you're ever, and like I said, I'm taking it serious. I want to be what I'm for without being against what I'm not. But if you ever get taught about Jesus as a means of consumption, we've missed the concept of fertility. If you've ever been told that if you give, Jesus will give back to you, it's some sort of cosmic trickery, it is just a religious version of consumption. That's why to me, that's why teaching the prosperity gospel as such is such a scary thing, because you miss the richness, the design law that's found in the concept of fertile soil. Still, the verse 8 again, still other seed fell on good soil where it produced a crop. I cannot stress this enough. The Bible does not say where it consumed a crop. We've got, you go, well, that doesn't seem that important. Think about this. It says that the soil was fertile soil and gave away a crop. That's a hard sell. People come in and you go, what's Jesus going to do in my life? He's going to make you better at giving things away. And you're like, oh, this is one of those churches. But again, is this a church law or is this a design law? The flow of fertility is outward, not inward. That alone shortens the line, doesn't it? You got to be fertile soil. The Bible wants you to be fertile soil, and Jesus teaches about being fertile soil. Okay, so I'm going to get more. No, you're going to give more. Oh. Good thing there's other churches around. I want to find a different. Imagine a farmer. We got farmers in this church. Imagine a farmer that plants seeds, works a harvest, takes care of what water this state finally allows him to have. No, don't. Listen. Finally produces a crop, and then it's like, I did it, and tills it all back under to fertilize the soil. Something in us knows that doesn't feel right. That feels like a wasted opportunity. There's something, if you create it, there's something so sickening about losing an animal that hasn't lived up to its potential. There's just something wrong about it. We feel it. There was something that stood out. One of the things I keep hearing back is the podcast with Jody Webb when she looked at Steve. And I was in the room, and she looks off camera at Steve and Jody, and she goes, they were fertile soil for who? For me. I mean, that alone, she is demonstrating what it means to have had fertile soil in her life. Steve and Jody were fertile soil on behalf of someone else. I just want to make sure that we understand what we're saying when we talk about living a life of fertility. It's on behalf of someone else. And what about when Steve said that, hey, if we don't go, no one's coming? It's a wonder I finished the rest of the podcast when he said that, because I'm like, we need to at least understand what it means when it says fertile soil, because fertile soil does not mean you put money in your pocket and God multiplies it and then you have more money. It's like creating a harvest for the benefit of no one and just tilling it back under. You will reach a point in your success, should you achieve it, you'll reach a point in your success when you go, life is pointless. The heart of fertility is sacrifice. And like I said, that statement alone will shorten the line of those trying to figure it out. Because if the Bible teaches about becoming listen, this is not about how to become a fertile church. Pause. I don't care about becoming a fertile church, because if we learn how to become fertile soil in our individual lives, the church will benefit from that. The church will be built of people who go, God, use my life to the benefit of others. So if fertility is just a rule taught in church, then when it comes to the sacrifice, we will examine the word, but we won't accept the word because we go, oh, that's too expensive. Oh, I wasn't really planning to go that far. We at least need to know what we're signing up for. I think sometimes that we're okay with examining the word. Hear me on this. That we're okay with examining the word. We'll read the word. But we don't like when it starts to read us. Do you ever have that moment where you're reading the Bible and it talks about the kingdom and what kingdom people are like, and you're like, I'm not like that at all. The Bible is reading you, and it's showing you, and you have to decide, do I want to change what the word says, or do I want to change to match what the word says? Do you see what I'm saying? So the Bible starts talking about fertile soil, it starts talking about sacrifice. We're like, oh, I was just going to put $5 in the offering. That's a church rule. It's not a design law. That's not living according to the design law. Examining, listen, point one, because I have points in my sermon, because I'm a professional. Point one, examining is not the same as accepting. If you're taking notes, to examine something is not the same as accepting it. I think the same people who will examine the word but not accept it get nervous when they're asked to examine their own faith or examine someone else's point, because there's never been the distinction between examining and accepting. I love listening to people with opposing views. I hope I get better at it. I hope we all get better at it. I think I've still got work to do in my own life, because by examining it, I'm not accepting it. I'm just understanding what it's saying. How cool would that be, as if as a church we go, there's a difference between examining and accepting it. I'm examining the word. Well, have you accepted it? Well, I planted this redwood seed right over here near some good soil on concrete, and it's just gonna figure it out. Proximity to the word, proximity to a church, proximity to the gospel is not the same as, when it examines you, accepting what it says. The Bible goes to great length to describe the space between examining and accepting, because I think here's the problem. We can leave here, we have this real spiritual experience, and worship is beautiful, and we think of worship as a consumption thing. We're like, I wish it tasted a little different. Like, no. Worship is about different sermon. James chapter 1 says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Why does it say deceive yourselves? Don't listen to the word and then deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Why does it say don't deceive yourself? Because James knows what we know is that sometimes we examine the word, we think that's accepting the word, and then we say it didn't work. Well, I tried. Do you know that I went to church 3 times and my life didn't get better? Don't deceive yourself. Don't deceive yourself into thinking that when you open the word and you begin to read it and it begins to read you and you're like, nope, too weird, I can't go that far. That's not the same as accepting it. That is a form of examining it. Matthew 15, and I'm just grabbing a couple verses for point of reference because the Bible is trying to explain, don't fool yourself into thinking that listening is the same as accepting. Someday Jesus is going to ask you something that will be so hard and you won't be able to deny it, but you'll try. Those are the moments I'm talking about. Matthew 15:8, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. It's almost like our words say one thing about God and our actions are more of an accusation about God. Like if we were to when I say words, I don't just mean spoken words. I also mean our political words. I swear there's times where, and I'm not pointing fingers, I don't even have one individual in my mind. I just remember this feeling of like, you're friends with your pastor on Facebook, right? Because what we say about God is different than the life that we live. The life that we live accuses God of being inconsistent. He won't come through. You got to watch out for yourself. God only goes so far. You got to do the rest. Our life is more of an accusation about God, but our words, we revere God. We're reverent with our words, but we're irreverent with our actions because we examine the word, we don't accept it. Does everybody follow me? Okay. Matthew 25, this is a scary parable, but we're going to leave the church here in a minute. We're going to take a little field trip. We're going to set church, we're going to set the word, we're going to set Jesus down, and we're going to go into the regular world for just a minute. But before we do, let me explain, because we're trying to decide, is fertile soil a church rule where Jesus goes, you better, or is it a design law where God goes, it's like gravity. Let me explain to you how it works. Matthew 25. He also, who had received 1 talent, there was 5 talent and he turned it into good. There's 3 talent, he turned it into good. And then there was 1 talent. And he came forward saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man. This is the servant coming back to the master who'd been given 1 talent. I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. Isn't it interesting that if we're trying to discover what does it mean to be fertile soil, that we read a parable about a man who buried something and it didn't grow? A man who buried something with the wrong reverence to the wrong thing, put something in the ground, nothing happened. That is what you would call what? Infertile soil. Doesn't it seem to you sometimes like people have the same opportunities, this person does great, this person does terrible, and it's like, what in the world? Reverence for the wrong thing. Here's my second point because, points. Nothing causes infertility in your life faster. Ready? Misplaced reverence. Reverence applied to the wrong areas. I think sometimes, honestly, if we're being honest with each other, and you don't get to talk, I have the microphone, but I'll assume you agree. I think sometimes we like coming into church and be like, oh Lord, oh, I feel so spiritual. Oh my gosh, that song just... We like that because we want to believe that we're reverent. We want to believe at the end of the day, we're like, oh God, I would call this youth groups in the South. Roll up, listening to the music that wouldn't work in youth. Shut that off, walk in, and you're like, oceans. I'm just telling you about my life. My mom found my Tupac CD one time. True story. Worst possible song. It's a whole thing. But listen, misplaced reverence means when we apply reverence to certain things that we think matter, but then we don't apply reverence to the things that make the biggest difference. When we will examine the word and give reverence to the authority or the power of the word, but we give no reference to its authority to speak into my life and for it to be right and me to be, we don't live in a culture that says anyone's wrong. I'm not getting too specific, but it is anti-cultural to tell anyone that they're wrong. The sky is not blue, it's green. You're right. So truth is just not a misplaced reverence. Reverence onto our own feelings versus the authority of God's word because we think it's a church rule and we think we are above church rules. Misplaced reverence. God is so powerful. Hope he hooks me up. Hope he helps me consume even more. Hope he gives me a nicer horse and a bigger truck and better job and a better spouse. Hope he hooks me up because he could. I believe you. Oh, God, it says anything prayed in belief. I believe you could. And it's like, what? That's not reverence at all. That's reverence for your own desires. That's saying my desires are so important, I'll even manipulate God for them. This is the hard part. This is when people read the Bible, they struggle with this. But like I said, we're going to take a field trip here in a minute. Verse 28 says, so take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has more, no, this is important that I get it right. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. From the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. Harsh. Very harsh. I don't disagree. But let's take a field trip for a second, because if it's just Jesus going, I'll punish you, I'll show you, you lazy, then it kind of just makes God seem sort of mean. But if it's a design law that says, let me tell you how the world works so that when it happens, you're not surprised. When it's slick outside and you hurry, you're going to fall. So then you go running outside, you slip and fall. It's not like God's like, that's why I had to fling you down right there. To show you I was right. Let's take a field trip. Scrap the word for just a second. Scrap God, scrap church. Let's just set that aside for a second. Let's just go out into the real world. Let's go to the business world. The business world has what is described as Price's Law. And Price's Law says this, that in any given company, the square root of the amount of people involved in contribution. If you have 100 people working on something, a square root, so what's the square root of 100? I was asking, I didn't know. 10. I was kidding. 10 people will be responsible for half of the overall production. This is just, hey, remember, we're at field trip. You go, I don't believe in the word. No problem. Let me just tell you what is observed in the real world. That a minority of the people contributing are responsible for a majority of the production. The square root of people participating are responsible for half of the overall production. That means that fertile soil is rare. You can go to the Pareto distribution, and the Pareto distribution says this, and this is so fascinating, that the 80-20, that 20% of the people are responsible for 80% of the production. And this isn't just in a business, this is in music. There's podcasts about this. I wish you could go look them up. Pareto distribution. Go do your own research. That in music, 80% of the music is sold by 20% of the artists. That 80% of the books sold are sold by 20% of the authors. That 80% of the goals scored in the NBA are scored by 20% of the players. That of the paintings painted and sold, that they're painted by 20% of the artists. And then, like I said, we're out of church. You can't even get mad at me. Sexual encounters. Hold on. Hold that thought. Don't get weird. There's a reason that God said one man, one woman. Let's keep the distribution fair, because what happens is you get anarchy when one person has too much success in one given area. Like, the Bible is not saying this. Let me give you a better example. Pick any 4 people in this room. Any 4. Remember, we're not in church for a second. I can say whatever I want. I can say a bad word if I want. Okay. Take any 4 people in this room, set up a Monopoly board, and on a long enough scale, by the time it's over, one person will have everything and the rest will have nothing. The only way that you can avoid the Pareto principle is to not play the game at all. This is where it starts to get really unfair. The better you do with your opportunities, the more opportunities that arrive. Because if you have an opportunity and you want to put it into somewhere, you want to put it into fertile soil. And fertile soil is rare. So that means the more successful you become, the more opportunities for success you acquire. But that also means the more you just kind of suck at everything, the opportunities that you would have start to go away. That's what the Matthew effect is that for those who have, everything will be given to them. Those who don't, everything will be taken from them. That's not God being mean. That's not Jesus saying, I'll punish you, I'll show you, I'll push you down in the ice. He's going, stop, pay attention. How much time do I have? What time is it? What time am I supposed to be done? We might just let the second service join in. I won't. Contributors always seem to just sort of have. If you're a contributor in your marriage, your chance of a healthy marriage are higher. If you're a consumer, your chances of a healthy marriage are almost zero. It's the 80-20, it's the 80-20, it's the Pareto effect, it's the Price's Law, it's all of these things. And so when Jesus tries to describe how important it is that we view life through terms of contribution, he is saying your best life is a life of contribution. And he lists what? How many different soils? He lists 4 soils. 25%. It's right there. It's a design law. Jesus is giving us an indication of how the universe is designed to work. And I think sometimes we're like, well, Jesus said that we have to, or we're going to be in trouble. He's like, you're not going to be in trouble, dummy. If you run on ice, you're going to fall down. I'm trying to keep you from it. And the line to becoming fertile soil is what? Short. There's nobody sitting in this room that doesn't have the opportunity to be able to look for ways to contribute. It says, as you become fertile soil, the opportunity to stay fertile soil increases. When you look for ways to consume, it's crazy to me, but consumers always somehow end up having never enough. You can have millions in the bank account and still not have a healthy marriage or relationships or community or all these things that actually contribute to a healthy life. And Jesus mentions 4 soils, 25% of them are fertile. Do you know that our greatest period of growth at Shiloh Ranch came when we were limited to 25% of the people in the room? It's a design law. That's my problem with Marxism, is that Karl Marx, I actually think Karl Marx thought he was right. He believed he was right. He called religion the opioid of the masses. He said it's the opioid of the masses because religion, and this one's all religions, this isn't just Jesus, all religions teach this acceptance of difficulty. So his point was, well, religion is just making you accept that your life is terrible. Under Marxism, true happiness lies only in consuming. Only the consumers are really happy, and they're building it on the backs of the contributors. And he's going, that's unfair. Marxism, do your own research. Marxism takes away your name. You don't have a name. Your name doesn't matter. You have a class. You have a rank. You don't get an identity. You don't get a story. There's no such thing as individualism. You are the result of whatever you've been given. There's nothing you can do to change it. He looked at Matthew 15 in the Bible and goes, see, even God was petty, and he would take from the poor and give to the rich. And my problem is this. Marx was saying, the only way to true equality is to do away with the design law. Now he's looking God in the face and going, your system doesn't work. And Jesus is saying, in this parable, you're going to try to fix a design law that says it's not fair that when you slip, you fall down. You'll never fix that. This is Jesus going, let me just shorten the road for you a little bit. Have you ever heard somebody say it takes 2 lifetimes to live only by experience, learn only by experience? He's going, let me just save you some time. That's a design law. The contributors begin to flourish and they become fertile soil because they listen to the word and they align themselves to that. And they start to become these people that make an impact in the world. The consumers, no matter how much they get, they're always miserable. No matter how many crops you plow into them, they never produce anything back. So I guess it's up to you to decide, is it a law or is it a design? Because here's what I know. We can hear that and it can lie dormant and you go, that doesn't work because you never try it. Ooh, proximity to a church. You can look out there and you see cows that we're going to give away. You can see firewood that we're going to give away, and it's attributed to you not one bit if it's not active in your life. Please hear what I'm saying. I don't want anybody to leave and go, I'm good. My church does lots of good stuff. The church has never done anything. Individuals within the church have made choices. Individuals within the church have created some cool stuff. The church, I just don't want you to go down the wrong road and go, well, it didn't work for me. You know what's interesting to me? That sometimes the best way to bring fertility back into soil, burn it. You just burn it. By burning it, what you're doing is you're taking all the distractions and all the nonsense and all the stuff. And I'm going to tell you, nobody wants to burn everything down and start over. Nobody does. Nobody wants to go face things that they've been dealing with for years and go, I've got to get a handle on this. Nobody wants to call an addiction because once you call an addiction, there's accountability. No, and there's no way to know if you're addicted if you never try to stop. Am I right? That's a joke. I'm concerned for everybody who's like, that's a good point. Remember, I said the best way to create infertility is to place your reverence in the wrong area. And I think sometimes we really place a lot of reverence on our comfort more than our fertility. If you've ever known anybody who's gone through fertility treatments to try to have a baby, the first thing they'll tell you is it's terrible. Because as you're going through fertility treatments, it's a what? It's a process. It's a how-to. Burning down comfort, burning down the things that, I think sometimes, here's the problem. I think we give such deep regard and such respect to our comfort. I think sometimes our life at a personal level lacks fertility because we want a comfortable marriage. Can I tell you, like I've said this before, one of my least favorite words? Influencer. It's one of my least favorite words because they kind of all look the same. You go to social media and they're like, influencer, like, why do you look like all the other influencers? Like, literally exactly the same. I think that means that you're more influenced. That's what my marriage is supposed to look like. You don't know what their marriage looks like. You know what their pictures look like. You don't know what their conversations are. We want a comfortable job. What does that even mean? A comfortable job is a place where you have meaningful contribution, not meaningful consumption, because no matter how much your job pays you, it's never enough. Find something where you can contribute. That's where we find these jobs that we think exist out there. I want a comfortable church. Go to a church with no people in it then, because we're broken and messed up and we're figuring it out. But we're contributing, we're leaning in. The expectation of perfection. Listen, there's some places, I've been to some churches, you're like, I think these people might be perfect. Not here. Like, I'm not even sure these people are okay. I want a comfortable faith where Jesus shows up and he just reads me Jeremiah 29:11 at bedtime every single night and never examines me or tells me that I'm wrong. I'm failing at I want to be what I am without being against what I'm not. Just know. We place so much reverence on our comfort, and then we can't figure out why our life lacks fertility. Why everybody else keeps getting what you wanted and what you prayed for. Our life lacks fertility because we thought our fertility comes from what church we're connected to or what people we're around or what photos we can project out into social media or what clan we're accepted into or what tribe we're a part of. Or we're like, why does my life feel like because here's the really sad part of Matthew 15. It says that when you refuse to be a contributor, everything gets taken from you forcibly. The fields eventually burn anyway. Is that scary? That like the design law is you run outside, you're going to fall down. But it's also saying, but hey, if you don't learn how to give to the word, like, because that's what the fertility is when the word comes to life in your life. When the word goes in, changes you, and you become something better, and the word begins to produce a harvest. That's what Matthew 7 talks about when it says, then away from me, evildoer, I never knew you. Listen to this list. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and not drive out demons in your name? Did we not perform any miracles in your name? And Jesus is going, that was a means to consume. You never became fertile soil. That was all something, a little trick that you learned so that you could benefit from it. And Jesus goes, this isn't for you. You don't even want it. See, that's the second half of that verse that I believe Jesus is going, you're not coming into heaven, but the good news is this isn't what you wanted anyway. You wanted a faith that never caused you to ever have to give, ever, and you got it. One of the scariest concepts that we teach in our culture, and this, again, field trip outside the church. My three least favorite words when put together. Ready? Follow your arrow. You have some magical arrow that knows better than the designer. Really. Your arrow. So I said like that too. Arrow. Follow your arrow. I'm just following my arrow. I haven't preached in a while, can you tell? Just following my arrow. You don't have a clue where you're going, and your arrow is leading you to more consumption. I don't feel like I'm getting what I need out of this marriage. And my arrow is telling me someone else will eventually give me everything I need. This job just doesn't get me. I don't feel fulfilled. Follow your arrow. If you have this tattooed on you, I'm so sorry. You can cover it up, because when you start becoming fertile soil, you'll be able to afford it. Woo. Listen, let's just say this. Jesus, it's like he pulls the curtain back and goes, someday you're going to learn about Price's law and the Pareto principle, and you're going to learn about the Matthew effect. You need to be fertile soil, because fertile soil is what just launches you to this life of fertility that doesn't require commas in your bank account. Healthier marriages, healthier relationships, healthier community, healthier contribution, a life that doesn't require Marxism where we break the design for me to be happy. I get a name. I get to be an individual. My life matters. Jesus knows my name. He doesn't care how much money I have. He doesn't care. Have you ever stopped to think about that? That somebody in Belize right now is praying for help and God is sending help from a guy in Texas. You can't manufacture that. Your design law won't allow that apart from Jesus. And he's going, live a life of fertility. That is the life of happiness. And Marxism says you don't get a name, you don't get a class, you don't get it. No, forget that. The God who created this earth says that I am given the opportunity to be fertile soil, and I'm going to take it. And I'm expecting right now, might as well just get used to it. I'm going to face some really difficult times until I get used to the concept of sacrifice. Until I get comfortable with the concept of sacrifice, it will be a battle. But I've got to burn some fields in my life where I've placed too much reverence on the wrong things. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that as a corporate gathering, or whatever that looks like, whatever you would call Shiloh, God, that you would encourage us to become people who are contributors, not consumers. God, the secular world has discovered the truth in this statement that, God, when we look for opportunities to be contributors, our life is enriched. It's crazy to think that, God, our opportunities are just around the corner of sacrifice. God, that when we get to a place where we expect that we're going to have to sacrificially give in every area of our life, every area of our life at some point is going to come with sacrificial contribution, whether that's confession, whether that's admission, whether that's finances, whether that's time, whether that's being nice to someone we don't want to. God, let us become fertile soil. There's no line. God, there's no line. We can walk out today determined to get there. Even if it's not in our nature, God, we can walk out determined to become fertile soil in our lives. And I pray you'd help us to lean into that at an individual level. Pray in Jesus' name, amen.